Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Facebook Live discussion. And this week we're talking about grief and how that works into our process of healing, even from an abusive relationship. So my name is Ailsa Kepi. I'm a somatic sex educator and a coach, and I am curator of this group, Women Healing from Emotional Abuse with Power, Passion, and Pleasure. And I'd like to welcome you to one of our weekly conversations. We post these videos every week on a topic that's relevant to you being in this group, and hope many of you can join us or catch the video in the replay. So I wanted to kind of take this topic of grief and work it into how it relates to us as women that are healing from this type of emotional abuse, usually an abusive relationship, either with a partner or with someone else in our lives. How does grief fit? Because we don't feel like we should have to grieve something that was so abusive, so horrible, so downgrading to our whole entire system, and yet we still seem to have this sense of grieving. So how does that work? So I wanted to address the fact that this is absolutely normal. When we lose anything, whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, evil thing, wonderful thing, we are going to still grieve. It's still going to leave that hole inside us that leaves us feeling a loss. Sometimes we feel a grief in our own self about losing ourself. And we can sometimes notice that grieving coming up even within a relationship. But we also grieve, and I've noticed a lot of people posting in the group about feeling really sad and depressed and all of these things after they have, they've mustered all their courage, they've gotten out of an abusive situation, and then they're hit with this overwhelming grief. So I took for the outline of this talk, it's David Kessler and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 Stages of Grief, which you may already be familiar with. However, just to kind of talk through how they're relevant to us in our situation. So the first stage of grief, let me just preface this by saying these aren't stages that we move through in a linear way, like once we've finished with this stage, we move to the next stage and then we never go back. These stages are kind of feelings that we go in and out of, and we may circle back and we may come forward, and we may, it's more of a kind of spiral than it is just okay, I'm done with that stage, moving on kind of thing. Most of our emotions, most of the way our body works, most of the way real healing works is actually more spiral, more kind of all over the place. It's not a linear thing, which is kind of why we've struggled so much in our culture with this kind of patriarchal structure of step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Well, what if for you it's like step 5, step 2, a little step 1, into step 3, back to step 2? Like, what if you're not following the typical pattern? And that's absolutely normal in healing. I'm actually, I've worked over a decade in bodywork, and when I work on people's bodies, healing is never linear. Yeah, and welcome to those of you who are on here. Hi, Michelle. Why you're feeling like lost since things happen, even though it's, not something you're really sad about the thing, but it's still creating a sense of loss. So the first stage, if we're just going to talk about them, remembering that we can kind of weave in and out of all of them. The first stage would be denial. And you might notice that you have been in this stage. You might notice others in the group in this stage. And, denial is kind of when you lose something, the world just kind of becomes meaningless and overwhelming, and just nothing makes sense. And you just feel like you're going numb. This is often a thing that people say. And what we need to realize, and what really made sense to me, is that this shock and kind of numbness that we feel is actually helping us, because it's like titrating the amount of grief that we deal with at any one time. If we were just just moved out of a relationship, abusive or otherwise, and then boom, we had to feel everything about that loss, if we had to just feel it all at once, it literally might swamp us. And so having a little bit of a sense of denial, like not really sure what we got out of, not really sure that we feel anything about it at all, that sense of numb kind of, I don't know what happened, but I'm just gonna put one foot in front of the other kind of feeling it's a helpful thing for a little while. We just need that. We can't take it all at once. And so this like helps us cope and actually helps us survive some of this stuff. And as we start to accept the reality of the loss, and we start asking ourselves questions like, feelings start coming to the surface, we start realizing that, wait a second, like, what was that all about? Was like, what is narcissism, or what is emotional abuse, or was that really me acting crazy, or was that him? And I know for myself, I can't put a number on it, but it was probably years, like months to a couple of years even, that I was probably in this stage. And I started kind of twigging that what I'd been through was not normal. And, I started asking questions, and I started researching, and little pieces started dropping into place. And that process took a while, and, it really added up to kind of over time, adding up to kind of being able to move into the next stage, which in this sense is the anger. And here's where, I really have compassion for those of you who are really angry. And we still, the ones that have healed, we still go back to that kind of anger as well. We have anger towards like what they did to us, being invalidated, being, not loved in the way we wanted, not having any feedback, or being put down. A lot of you have like more intense forms of abuse, sexual abuse or physical abuse, financial abuse. Starting to get angry about this is kind of another stage of the grieving process, actually. Realizing that this is not okay. I had many reasons to be angry, one of which was, that I was left with a huge debt, and I'd never been in debt before. And now, all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, like, this debt is not my debt. Why am I getting landed with it? And I went through a period of having anger about lots of things, that being one of them. So, yeah, so people are noticing that loneliness and sadness can turn into anger. And this is known by, many cultures, that anger like helps us to mobilize ourselves to keep moving forward. So even though it seems like it's an endless kind of anger, there's an energy to it that pulls us out of like the denial, the kind of like shutting down, and we start having a connection. Even though it's a connection through anger, we might be angry at them, we might be angry at our parents for supporting the other person, or we might be angry. Somehow the anger starts to connect us outward to the world again. And this is an important piece of the puzzle, because the first sort of denial, we could easily just disconnect from everyone. And so the anger can help to flip that and actually make us start connecting to the world, which is an important part. So, our society fears anger. We're just not, we're not used to dealing with anger. We always try to damp it down. And so, we have to learn to feel our anger in a good way. I'm not saying go out and rage on everyone, but realize that you're angry, and that can bring an energy rising up in you to have action, to reach out, to connect to other people that possibly have been through the same thing, that we start kind of saying, wait a second, this isn't right. And the other thing to notice is that underneath anger is usually pain. And pretty much in our culture, just as human beings, we'll do anything not to feel pain. We just, we're like, please don't make me hurt. I don't know if any of you know Brer Rabbit. It's not really socially acceptable anymore, but this was a story I grew up with. when Brer Rabbit was thrown, he'd say, do anything to me at all, just don't throw me in the briar patch with all the thorns. And he tricked Brer Fox into throwing him in the briar patch. But it's kind of like, we're like, do anything to us, just don't make us hurt. And so we have to kind of get through that and realize that feeling the pain is kind of necessary, but remembering that we have to do it in stages. We can't always just go in and feel everything all at once. So if you're struggling with kind of like, this is too much to deal with all at once, we want to, and this is kind of known in trauma work now, that we want to just like touch in on little pieces of it. Just kind of start picking away at the edges of the pain. And sometimes that's what's underneath the anger, and we need to start feeling it, realizing that we're actually hurting. So this connection of anger helps us feel like better than feeling just nothing, feeling numb. So feeling angry is at least something. We're feeling something. So the third stage that comes up, and again, this may come in and out of the other stages, is kind of a bargaining that we do. And by this, we start talking to ourselves like, well, if I, help everyone else, like if I go and I'm really good and I help at a women's shelter or something, somehow I'll get a good relationship. Or if I I'll wake up from this nightmare. If I'm good enough, if I go back to church, if I, look after my kids, if I do whatever, we start bargaining with God or whatever we think of as a higher power, and sometimes with ourselves. And, we sometimes look at our life and go, well, I wish that I could go back to that good feeling I had when I first started, seeing my ex and everything was wonderful. If I could only go back to that, life would be wonderful. If only this, if only that. And when we catch ourselves using these terms a lot, like if only, or what if I had more patience? What if I hadn't, made him so angry? What if this? These are, comments that are not going to lead to our healing. They're going to keep us stuck in this kind of bargaining stage. And bargaining doesn't usually work. And yeah, you're right. Like, that first stage seems magical. Usually when you're with an emotional abuser, they can play that stage really well and they get you hooked, and you kind of have that in your head. Well, if only I could keep it at that stage. If only I could keep him happy. If only I could do this. But these are just ways of making ourselves feel guilty. And guilt actually keeps us stuck. So in our healing process and working through like the grief process, we can get stuck here if we start letting the shame and the guilt and our self-talk keep us in this place of it must have been our fault. Even if I know a lot of us are told that it's our fault. But that's where you might need to go back to the anger and find some anger about this. You might need to go back and just start feeling little bits of stuff underneath. So the feeling guilt and stuff and having this self-talk of like, if only it was like this or if only that, is really hard. So this often kind of dives into the fourth stage of grieving, which is depression. We don't often think of depression as a stage. We often think of depression as like a diagnosis and you're stuck forever. Oh, you have depression. Oh my gosh, you're going to be on medication forever. You're going to be depressed. You have something wrong with you that you're never going to heal. But depression is often, I'm not saying always, there are definitely different types of depression, but often what we're calling clinical depression is actually a stage of grieving, and we haven't actually acknowledged this in our culture very much. So when we have gone through those first three stages and we're not getting anywhere, we don't feel healed, sometimes we start noticing, well, okay, in the present moment, I'm still feeling empty, I'm feeling alone. And this stage feels like it's going to last forever. It's an appropriate response to a great loss. Feeling a depression and a sadness and all of this stuff, we have to understand is an actual appropriate response to what's happened to us. If we didn't feel anything and we just kind of a week later bounced back and suddenly had a great relationship and everything was good, that would be really unusual and probably would never really happen. So, an appropriate response to losing something amazing, whether that's losing ourselves and trying to find that, or losing what we thought of as a magical relationship. When we lose that, it's a big loss, and feeling depressed about that and alone and empty is natural. Do we want to get stuck here? No, but we want to acknowledge that this is a progression. We will start seeing that. One question you can ask when you notice that you're kind of in this stage is ask yourself, am I still in a present day situation that is actually depressing? Because often we start feeling depressed and missing whatever it was we're missing about the past when we actually have moved out of an abusive relationship. We're on our own. We kind of have our life kind of going again. And then boom, it hits. It's like we're depressed, we're lonely, and all of this stuff. But when you look at your situation, you're like, well, I have work, I have a place to live, I'm pretty okay, and I'm not in this abusive situation anymore. And so asking yourself if you're really in a depressing situation now or not, or whether you're just kind of grieving this thing that you lost over here that was so important in your life, probably too important in your life, because most of us put all of our 100% of our energy into the other person and forget about ourselves. And so we've lost not only ourselves, we've lost that relationship. So it's a double emptiness. So this is like, quite often a big chunk of our healing time we kind of spend in depression. And again, we don't want to get stuck here. We may find anger brings us out of it, and then we go through a little bit of denial again, and then we come back to this. And moving into the fifth stage, which is acceptance, is a furthering of all this journey. Acceptance is not the same as just feeling okay. I'm okay now, don't ask me. Recognizing that the relationship is gone and accepting the truth of what is now. So if we actually get to a place of accepting, what? My ex is now going out with my best friend. What? My ex has moved to a different country. I'm never going to see him again. I'm not going to get child support. I'm going to whatever. Coming to an acceptance of the reality of the situation. It takes time, but it actually is possible to not just, we might go back through anger, we might cycle back through depression about it, but coming to a true acceptance of it is like, what? Here I am in this place, and I'm, finding a way to move through it, and I'm accepting that. And sometimes acceptance just means we're just going to have a few more good days than bad days. Sometimes I have to give people a reality check when they work with me in my program, which I'll tell you about at the end, but sometimes I have to give them a reality check. It's like, you're not going to heal from this and suddenly you're going to be rainbows and roses all the time. Life just isn't like that. Life is, ups and downs, and finally coming to an acceptance of where you've been and what you've actually gone out of. You've grown strength, you've grown resilience, and you find an acceptance, and you notice the good days more than the bad days. You're still going to have some bad days. I still have bad days myself, and I do this work for a living. So, I don't think it's even possible to just live in a good day all the time. Perhaps if you're enlightened. I haven't reached that yet. But what I do work on every single day is noticing the little good things about that day, noticing the little good things that I feel good about in my body, in myself, and really focusing on those instead of the feelings of depression, the feelings of loneliness, the feelings, of loss, all of that. And so we might make new connections, we might find new meaningful relationships, and find a way to have interdependencies with other people in a way that isn't codependency, which is a big part of, usually a big part of our past. And this stage actually is where you can learn new patterns and beliefs. All the stages you can come to healing for sure, and you might cycle through all of them, like I said. But if you touch in on this stage, you'll realize that you can learn new ways of relationshiping. You can learn about yourself. You can accept how you are. You can learn how to navigate relationships without falling into unhealthy patterns. And so we don't deny our feelings anymore. We're able to listen to our needs, and we can grow and change with that. So we end up investing in a relationship to ourself, which is the most important person to invest in. And that's what I say to the people that are interested in joining my program. It's a big deal to invest in yourself. You've invested in everything else, everyone else usually, except yourself. And when you invest in yourself, you're showing yourself that you love yourself, that you're putting yourself first, and that you're showing yourself the kind of love and respect and care that you would want someone else to treat you with. So speaking of my program, just quickly, I have an 8-week program called The Body Leads the Way, and I work with people through this type of process. It's very similar to the grieving process, the healing process of working from being in an emotional relationship and keeping on attracting those types of relationships to a place where you have the confidence and the self-esteem and the skills to navigate interdependent relationships, to have a way of committing to yourself and to loving yourself, forgiving the past, all of that stuff. So I have this 8-week program. If you're interested in working with me, I take only a few people, but I offer free 1-hour calls. They're called breakthrough calls. You're welcome to book an hour with me. Let's talk about your situation. Let's see if you're a fit for my program. And if I can't work with you right then, or we're not quite together yet, then I will offer you some other resources and keep you up to date, and you'll be on my radar for future. So it's definitely worth it, even if you just do the call with me. And you can register for that by going to www.ailsakeppie.com/apply. So that's www.ailsakeppie.com/apply, APPLY. And you can go straight to my calendar and book a call with me. And I guarantee that many women have booked a call and gotten a lot out of just an hour of let's get some clarity on where you are. Let's look at your process. Let's see where you're getting stuck. And let's see how we can move you forward. And I just wanted to mention that one is give grief its time. Sometimes it takes this time. And this is why I specifically wanted to have this group container here on Facebook to hold space for all of us in these different stages. And, everyone's in different stages, which helps because we can see that we don't need to be stuck in any one of them, that we can keep moving. We can keep working that spiral up and up so that we eventually feel that we're having more good days than bad days, and that we've really come to an acceptance and a love for ourselves and our new life. And, this is many stories in the past, many fairy tales, many myths from lots of different cultures have used the idea of, having a crisis, going into the forest, and going into the darkness, working through the dark night of the soul in whatever format that takes in the story, and coming out the other side and really becoming spiritually, emotionally mature as an adult. And this is what, part of my process is really helping us see how do we move through these processes. How do we go from being, the princess in the tower or the child that's lost in the woods or whatever? How do we move to being the queen, reigning across all the kingdoms or something like that? And we do that by moving through this process. We do that by supporting each other through this process. And we do that by realizing that we need help along the way at certain points. And if that help is something that, definitely reach out to me, book a breakthrough call with me. I'm more than happy to spend some time with you and look at your particular situation. So I hope you enjoyed that talk. I really felt like this was an important topic, and I love when you in the group bring up topics that you want me to talk about on these weekly talks. So if you have another topic you're interested in, definitely message me, suggest it in the newsfeed. I will do my best to do that. All the previous talks that I've done in the group are there. They're still there as videos in the group. You can search when you have the search bar for search in the group, type videos, and all videos will come up, and you can click on all of them. They're all about 20 or 30 minutes long. They're all on relevant topics, and many of them are extremely helpful, at whatever stage you're at. So thank you so much for watching. I always enjoy chatting with you every Wednesday. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. If you feel ready to book a call, I look forward to that. If you just into sharing in the group, please do share your personal stories. We want to support you with that. Try not to post too many external links to the group. Just, we want to keep the container in the group as much as possible. If there's something you absolutely have to post because it's, you know, it's been so helpful to you, by all means try that. But I'd like to keep it as personal reflections and support. If you write poetry, if you paint a picture, if you do something inspiring, if you took your kid for ice cream, let's post some of that. I love that some of you post quotes, and post when you're struggling as well, of course, and get support with that. We're here for you, and I'll talk to you again next week. It's Ailsa Kepi signing off.